Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the webinar, Safe and Secure Operations in the Textile Industry amid the Omicron variant today, this lovely afternoon. My name is Indras Ghosh, and I'm the Sustainability Lead at the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce. Today's event addresses an important topic for all of us as we experience nearly 2 years of pandemic. People as well as businesses are still trying to recover from the impact of COVID. And just today, India reported over 150,000 new COVID cases, while several states still impose restrictions across India. The textile industry suffered a lot due to the pandemic as people lost jobs, earnings, and businesses are required to shut down in 2020 and 2021. Today, however, the picture is much brighter as manufacturers and exports alike are recovering and gaining momentum in their production as well as their revenue. At the IGCC, we contributed in our small way last year as we conduct anti-COVID hygiene training for textile manufacturers. The training aimed at providing businesses with the necessary tools to prevent COVID infections in the textile factories. And today, we are very proud to build on that training as we continue our cooperation with the Business Scouts for Development program funded by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, and announce our new partnership with the Textile Sector Skill Council and the South India Textile Research Association to unveil our healthcare and safety training for the textile industry. Ladies and gentlemen, we are joined today with experts and esteemed guests in the textile industry who will share their thoughts and insights on how textile manufacturers can continue to recover and maintain and grow and the momentum as we work together to achieving greater business growth and, most importantly, protect textile workers and their family against COVID-19. Without further ado, I would like to invite our partner, Mr. Philip Glazer, the Regional Coordinator Asia for Business Scouts for Development, GSM. Mr. Glazer, stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Namaste. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear Mr. Indras Ghosh and dear Dr. Swapna Mishra. As you already mentioned or heard, my name is Philip Glazer, and today I'm speaking on behalf of GIZ's program Business Scouts for Development. First of all, I would like to thank you very much for organizing such an important webinar on safety measures to ensure safe operations in the textile industry in India, especially under the consideration of the Omicron variant of the coronavirus. And of course, thank you very much for inviting me to provide some short welcoming remarks. As you said, Mr. Ghosh, the whole world is massively affected by the corona pandemic since the beginning of 2020. And despite some ups and downs of the spreading of the virus, worldwide vaccination initiatives, massive lockdowns, till today, unfortunately, there is still no post-COVID time in sight. And as a consequence, the health sector, the private sector, and of course, the people are facing massive losses caused by the corona pandemic. The current dominating Omicron variant, due to its increased infection rate, adds to the already existing pressure. So what to do? As the end of the pandemic is unfortunately not yet in sight, we all need to adapt to the situation. Governments need to adapt their regulatory framework, and businesses and people need to adapt as well. The Indian textile sector is a vital part of the Indian economy. Directly and indirectly, the sector provides more than 100 million jobs and the economic fundament for the same number of people. To enable the Indian textile sector to stay operational by providing a safe work environment for the employees and management of the sector is of the utmost importance. And as a consequence, special skills for the workers and the management team of textile companies have to be developed and implemented. Today's webinar continues the initiatives of the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce to provide these skills. supported by our business scout Thomas Michaels and the Indian Textile Sector Skill Council. The Indo-German Chamber of Commerce carries on to set stimulating impulses for the Indian economy, especially for the so important textile sector. GIZ appreciates this initiative very much and is looking forward to continue our great cooperation in this area and beyond. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm looking forward to an enlightening webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glazer, for being here and for your kind words and kindly supportive words. Next, I would like to invite Dr. J.V. Rao, the director, or CEO rather, excuse me, Textile Sector Skill Council. Of course, for those of you in the textile industry, he's very well known. He has been in the sector for over 45 years, educating and skilling, and as well as providing social work. And he's presently heading the Textile Sector Skill Council, and with a target of skilling over 1 lakh people every year in the industry. That is the largest employer after agriculture. Dr. Rao, the stage is yours.
Good afternoon to everybody. Let me first thank both IGCC as well as CITRA for having readily agreed to educate the textile workers the kind of minimum requirement that are required to keep them safe. And I also take this opportunity to bring to your kind notice the budget that has been announced this morning by Nirmala Sitharaman, the finance minister, where she had given a lot of emphasis on skilling, and she has also given a lot of emphasis on health related issues which need to be taken care of. So I think it is the right time that we have started this initiative of educating the textile industry workers, rather educating the whole society and textile industry in particular at all the levels, be it at the worker level or even at the middle management level or even at the management level. So I must really appreciate and convey our sincere thanks on behalf of the industry for the initiatives taken by both IGCC and also by CITRA. Now, having said that, for the benefit of all those who are new to the activities of Textile Sector Skill Council, I would like to say that this institute was established 8 years back in 2014. The main purpose of the scope of this particular institute is basically to develop industry accepted skilling systems. Till now, we are concentrating more on skills that are directly related to the industry in terms of machine operators and things like that. But this is something totally different in the sense, apart from the domain skills, they also need to have certain degree of soft skills. And that way, it is the right time that you people have come out, and with your kind cooperation, I think we will be able to see that the information gets percolated all across the textile industry. And it is also not, this information will also be going down the society through our textile workers and textile stakeholders which are right now working with us. So in this kickoff meeting, I thought it's my duty first to thank you all and tell the all the mills, textile industry people, to actively participate and take advantage of this. I will be too eager to listen to the finer details of this particular webinar, and also the finer details which you are going to have it in the February 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. So without taking much of your time, I am now pass on the mic to the MC.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rao, for your kind words as well. Before we invite Mr. Gaurav Sharma to share his experience on the whole COVID situation with his company, I would like to provide the participants with sneak peek of the COVID awareness video that we have developed. I hope you can see my screen. The video?
Not yet. Now, yes, thank you.
Hope
Lakshmi, who works in residential societies in Delhi, is clueless how loss of one person's income will play out for her family.
I have been paid this month's salary by most of my employers. But my husband has got no money. The factory is also shut. Don't know when it will open. It's very difficult to run the house.
Like million others in India, Lakshmi's husband was employed in the textile sector. But a nationwide 21-day lockdown to contain the pandemic has resulted in unprecedented chaos in this sector.
With factories reopening post the second lockdown, let me invite a few of the factory workers and their families over tea to spread awareness. So, we all can be more careful in curbing the spread of COVID. And the families do not have to deal with the ordeal of going through another lockdown, dealing with pay cuts and joblessness.
She explains how it is imperative for workers in the factories to follow all COVID safety measures. Correctly wearing a mask, temperature checks, maintaining distance, washing hands, staying home when unwell to prevent further spread of the virus, getting vaccinated.
The new variant of COVID also poses as a threat, and now more than ever. We cannot let our guard down.
Let us all come together to spread awareness to others and keep ourselves safe and hygienic during COVID.
Sorry, thank you everyone for looking at the video. The video essentially tried to depict that what we do within the work of the textile worker also will affect the workers, essentially, the workers and their families. So therefore, it is important to maintain your hygiene level as well. With that in mind, now I would like to invite Mr. Gaurav Sharma, who is Managing Director of OBT Private Limited. Mr. Sharma, the stage is yours to share your experience and your company's experience during the pandemic and how you were able to operate smoothly.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. Good afternoon to everybody. I would like to thank the team here to provide this platform to discuss such an important issue, which is not only just relevant for the industry, but I think for the whole nation, and how to deal with what is now a new way of life. I will just take 10 minutes to share with you how the COVID pandemic and now the Omicron has impacted us, the business, workers, suppliers, and buyers, the challenges faced. I'll try and club the 2 points in one, and what steps we had taken as a organization, and the role of health and safety training. So that is broadly how I'll walk through. Please feel free to stop and ask questions, or we can do that at a later stage. So, well, we've had 3 waves of COVID, and all 3 waves had different challenges. The first one was the most difficult because the country had come to a grinding halt and doing any activity was almost impossible. The second one was not a complete lockdown, but had a huge toll on human life, and parts of the country were completely stopped because of the fear and the amount of people falling sick and hospitals not coping up, and huge casualties took place. The third, which is what we are going through right now, the Omicron, is also very different. Thankfully, it is not as dangerous, but it is highly contagious. So today, as we are focusing on Omicron, I will just try and talk about the experiences through this third wave. During the COVID pandemic, home industry in general, so I'll just take a step back. OBT is a manufacturer and exporter of home textile products. We are a 100-year-old company. We manufacture handmade carpets, and we have also started manufacturing some furniture and what are known as made-ups like pillows and cushions and poofs and top of the table items, table linen, etc. So home textiles is a major domain. During the pandemic, the home industry saw uptick in demand in a manner that it had never seen before. The 2 waves saw the demand going almost through the roof as far as the West was concerned, driven mainly by America. However, with the coming in of Omicron, we see that change a little bit. We are seeing a little bit of slowdown effect coming. The world, which seemed to be on its way to recovery before the third wave, the Omicron started, seems to have gone a bit in a reverse gear. And we can see a little bit of slowness coming in the industry. How did it affect the clients, or how is it affecting the buyers at this point in time? Well, the buyers today are missing workers in the West. And when I talk of buyers, again, I'll emphasize, for us, the experience is predominantly with exports and US and Europe. So buyers are missing workers. They have a broken supply chain. They are feeling a lot of uncertainty, and the effects of inflation are catching up. The buyers are struggling because the cost of raw materials have gone up. The cost of labor in their own market has gone up. And there is a tremendous delay in supply chain. And we all know about the shipping challenges, which have the whole world is facing at this point in time. These have led to shortages during the peak selling season for them. That is when the Omicron hit the West. It hit the West in September, October, and started peaking towards December. Big retailers not only lost sales, but because of this, they also lost a lot of loyal customers because they did not have the product to sell. And customers changed brands, buying was available. So it had a big impact on the buyers. Retailers also had to increase their prices because of the rising input costs, which it is yet to be seen, but one is expecting that it will impact sales. The inflation has been the highest in the last 40 years in US. It's hit a 6.8% in US. A 5.4% inflation rate is at this point of time in UK, which is the highest in the last 30 years. Even the Eurozone is seeing the highest inflation in its last 25 years at 5%. So the buyers are having a very difficult time at this juncture, trying to manage rising costs, broken supply chain, missing workers in their stores and to do home delivery, and a heightened inflation, which is adding a lot of uncertainty to the economic environment. How is it impacting us as manufacturers and suppliers? The biggest impact has been to the factories. One of the biggest challenges we've had is that the business is generated by the business is generated through buyer meetings. The meetings were usually face to face. They're no longer happening. Our own company had planned trips to be in Germany for Domotex, which is the biggest carpet exhibition in the world, which got cancelled. Then we had planned a big road show for our customers in the US, which was to be held in the last week of January. That had to be cancelled. So one big challenge is the interaction with buyers, as the platform is not there. The other challenges we face are obviously the lockdown. It has a crippling effect on supplies of goods and even of workers. We've had orders where to execute which we needed machinery and equipment which had been ordered. The factories were in like the NCR area to make this equipment, but they couldn't open their factories. And as a result, it was a nightmare to manage to execute those orders because the demand was there. We had to ship on time, but the factories machinery were not able to supply them. Raw material costs, we all know, has gone through the roof. The other issue has always been during these times is absenteeism due to sickness, also because of the 50% occupancy rule in certain areas, and also because of simple fear factor in the minds of the workers, and they don't want to go into a factory-like situation. Support activities have slowed down for the business. The other major impact has been on the cost, and equally important is the time which is required for shipping. Whether it's sea freight or it's air freight, the costs have gone very high. Just to give an idea, per kg airing cost to the US used to be about 250 rupees a kg. And at its peak, it had gone up to 1400 rupees a kg. And the time, let's say from Delhi to New York, we could send products in 48 hours. Now we have to cater for minimum 7 to 10 days. So all these things are become a big issue in the smooth functioning of the business. Workers also were very badly affected, are affected during these times. There is uncertainty for them. After the experience of the first two waves, they are scared as to what will happen if this becomes more dangerous or lasts for longer. Because of the impact of different rules for different areas, some areas the factories have to be shut down. In some areas, it is down to 50%. So as a result, some of the workers feel very nervous whether they'll have some work the next day or not. Difficulty in terms of mobility from their homes to the factories, particularly where the public transport system has come to a halt or has reduced its occupancy. And finally, just the fear, like what happened in the second wave, and people died trying to get back to their homes. Will it reach that level or not? So that fear at the back of their head makes them very uncomfortable. So from the basic level of the worker through the whole chain, going all the way up to the buyers and their end consumers, this has a ripple effect and becomes an issue which needs to be looked into at all levels. I'll quickly come to the steps taken by OBT to ensure smoother functioning. See, we are carpet business, rug business, which is handmade, is a cottage industry. It is spread out in rural areas where the infrastructure is very poor. Our operations are spread over 100,000 square kilometers. We are engaging, it's a labor intensive industry. We are engaging on any given day about 25,000 artisans who work for us. So in situations like this, where mobility is hampered, different areas have different rules which govern those areas. And it becomes very difficult to ensure smooth working. And on the other hand, the clients are there waiting for more and more goods because their demand is high and they do not want any delays. So the one thing which we did, obviously, which goes without saying, is that we follow whatever is the law of the land with regard to the pandemic. So wherever the offices had to work at 50%, we obviously did that. But over and above that, what did we do? In all our factories, we started creating a bubble of safe workers who would come and stay in the factories. We arranged for their food, their sanitation, entertainment, so that they could come and stay for 2-3 weeks and do the work till the lockdown or the expected lockdown time period was over. That helped us, even though it put a lot of strain on the management and the finances, but it helped us work through the pandemic. All COVID protocols in all our factories were put in place, whether it was social distancing, masks, washing of hands, temperature checking, rotating lunch times so that there's a safe distance while people have their lunch, number of people who go in a vehicle, all those things were put in place in every location. Production centers which are out in the rural areas were equipped with medical and protection gears like oxygen concentrators. There was a huge, we worried that if same thing happened in Omicron, what happened in the second wave, we don't want our workers to get affected, our weavers to get affected, our artisans to get affected. So oxygen concentrators were sent out to the production centers. Masks were there available for anyone who wanted to use them, sanitizers, illustrative displays on how to conduct, what to watch out for. Those kind of placards were made and notices were put in our production centers. Basic medicines, and most importantly, tie up with hospitals and doctors so that in case there is a problem, they know and we know who to reach out to. The executives, even though they had a fear for themselves, but they reached out to all the artisans. We went into the areas educating the people in the villages about the protocols, giving them emergency phone numbers of doctors and of our own staff for them to reach out to in case they're in trouble, in case there's severe sickness. We gave them the confidence that we were there to help and support and that they were not alone. They had to be reassured that a lot of them are migrant workers. They wanted to go home. And so obviously those who wanted to go home went home, but we said those who want to stay back, we'll have full support here and they should not worry. We arranged for vaccination drives like this time, and just before Omicron hit, I think 100% of our workers had been double vaccinated. We've had vaccination drives done in all our factories and offices. And on the other hand, we worked and planned a lot on the operation sides of the business, which was the production activities. We had seen in the past how with the lockdown, operating normally becomes almost impossible. So we started thinking, what is it that we can do in anticipation of lockdowns before time, so that if a lockdown happens or restrictions are put in place, which they were, we could still operate as smoothly as possible. So we planned on raw material procurement was done much in advance. We dye the yarn and then send it out to the villages for weaving. And normally it's timed in a pretty lean kind of a system. But in this case, we procured yarns in advance, we dyed them much in advance, and we sent it out to the villages, to the weavers, to the workers, so that they could, in case there's a lockdown or restrictions of movement of vehicles, they have the raw material to keep working. Today, thankfully, because of mobile, and that is something which we further developed, the internet system, the mobile communication system, that if they have the material, we had systems in place to monitor, track, advise, guide, and the production, so that the production continues without much of a problem, which we had during the first lockdown. We also took measures like starting to book our containers in advance. We spoke to our customers, told them what is happening, and that they should allow us to ship the goods which we are getting made ahead of the ship dates, that they should allow us pre-shipments, early shipments, so that the goods made should go out in case there is a lockdown. So both in terms of the workers, in terms of the operations of the factory, we took a lot of precautions like these, which helped us. In fact, during lockdowns, we had some of our highest production which we did, but at a huge cost, at a huge effort. And but it was a very good work shown by the team, which helped us which enabled us to do that. And I mean, to the extent in the second lockdown, we run about 6,000 to 7,000 looms. We were down to 2,500 looms. And to get those workers back was very difficult and took us a few months. And by the time we were up and running, the third wave, Omicron, came in, and we were worried that the same thing will happen. And that is why all these steps which I just spoke about were done and taken, so that the workers get the confidence that they don't need to go back if they voluntarily don't want to, and they will be taken care of, and the environment here is much safer than what it would have been at home, and there are people and systems out there to help. So that is how we manage with this. And healthcare and safety training was the most important thing which we experienced personally as a company. Went a long way to give that confidence to the workers. We tied up with the hospitals. I mean, with 25,000 artisans working, it was a huge task, but we tied up with hospitals in different areas, different districts. We distributed protective gears. We distributed food and medicines to hundreds of families. We gave financial help to the people who suffered who had tragedies in their family. And I believe that we need to develop these systems of safety and healthcare in much more meaningful way at a national level, which can then be rolled out across the country, across states, and so that there is some uniformity as we move from one location to another location. There are people who are doing this now as a full-time job, so that in case, God forbid, some things worse happen, we are more ready than what we are now. See, going forward, there is no doubt that healthcare and safety will play an important role. There may be more situations like this in the future, and we need to be ready for it. Developing strong and sustainable protocols today would make the difference between organizations and societies succeeding instead of failing. Instilling strong disciplines across workforce is the need of the day. Large retailers and buyers have strong social and environmental protocols which we need to follow. I'm sure very soon they will come out with protocols for health and safety compliance. They will do it, but whether they do it or not, we as a country, we as an industry should work on uniform protocols for safety and health, so that the machinery is well oiled much before it has to be used. We need to be ready to run. We need to be ready to hit the road running and ensure that disruptions in the future are minimized, and industry is ready to take this in its stride as it has taken many other challenges in the past. And I would say associations like yourselves taking all the initiative should help in this matter. And I'll say that COVID has taught us many things, and it has introduced us to a new way of life, which will stay, I hope, much, much after the pandemic goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma, for sharing your valuable insights. Yeah, I think if I were to summarize your talking points, essentially we need to be ready to develop a strong and sustainable mechanism to ensure that that the next wave of coronavirus, we are ready to answer to that. And most importantly, it needs to be geared toward your workers, toward your employees as well. Thank you very much. Before we move on to the next speaker, now participants, we would like to hear from you. Yeah. In a few seconds, we will have a live poll, which you can see on your screen. We would like to ask you, how have the Omicron variant affected your business operations? Now, unfortunately, the panelists cannot vote on this. Only the participants can. But please, we'll open it for 30 seconds and then we'll share the result. All right, thank you very much, everyone. We are closing the poll right now. And here are the results. So I can see that over quite a lot of you says that it has impacted your business operations, although in a very differentiated impact. Yeah. For those of you who said you're not impacted, it's actually 15%. Yeah, I think it's because you have already a good processes and mechanism in place. So congratulations. And yeah, thank you for the live polls. And for the next one, I would actually like to share the insights that IGCC has gathered from the participants of our last training on hygiene. Yeah. And most of this will be very similar to what Mr. Sharma has shared with us today. Let me just share my screen with you. Yeah. So, like we all know that it has been a rather roller coaster couple of years for the textile industries. We went through multiple lockdown and unlock periods, which are initiated either centrally or on the state level, and this, I think, contribute very large to a large extent to the uncertain nature of revival of the textile industry. Even today, there are still a few states which impose restrictions on movement of people as well as businesses. Yeah. This includes 50% of capacity for manufacturing industry. Even shops are also affected, and so on. However, things are improving. We are enjoying a rather stable period of unlock from July 2021 to present. Of course, the period goes into a staggered unlock period, rather, where there are returning domestic and foreign orders. There's also increasing guideline which allow factories to open on reduced capacity still, as well as increase in output, as well as export, as actually has bounced back in the textile industry. Just to reiterate what Mr. Sharma has said, we see essentially two types of issues faced by the textile industry in India. The first one is obviously the supply chain disruptions, which lead to unavailability or rising raw material costs and compulsory shutdown of factories due to COVID-19. I think businesses cannot significantly impact these factors, and therefore it takes quite a bit of time to ensure that there is a stability in the raw material costs, which are still work in progress in India right now, which everyone is still suffering from today. On the other side, the labor are of course exposed to very high infection risks, and because of this, there's a shortage of labor. And also then, because of the shortage of labor, we are also seeing rising of labor charges as well. I'll get into the impacts of all these challenges, some of them in the next slide. Yeah, because of the supply disruption, of course, there will be rising of costs of production because of the material costs and also the labor charges. Like Mr. Sharma said, the workers are also unwilling to rejoin the workforce due to fear of infection. And for those who are coming back to work, we also see a trend of high absenteeism among the workers, keeping in mind that the latest Omicron variant is highly contagious. Because of the shortage of labor, manufacturers are essentially offering higher incentives to attract workers. This can be in the form of add-on to the wages. Some have spent on transporting migrant workers from their home to the production facilities, using airlines as well as buses. Yeah, so that increases furthermore the cost of production. Until today, factories are still operating at reduced capacity up to 50 to 40%. This is on top on the already limited capacity allowed by certain state government. And because of this, although orders are coming back, they are not able to cater to large orders, leading to loss of revenue. In extreme cases, these companies are also then lost their regular customers, regular buyers from foreign brands, for example, because they have to look at alternative to get their supply. Another impact is what we're seeing is that foreign buyers often require suppliers to put in place COVID-19 intervention system, which comes under the broad category of healthcare and safety, yeah, which they are communicated to all their suppliers, including in India. And last but not least, local enforcement in India of mandatory COVID-19 protocols are still in place, and this is regularly updated by the central government and the state government, although on the enforcement front, it can get quite uncertain because it takes time for the protocols to trickle down to the local authorities. So how can textile manufacturers prepare? I think from the supply side, it is very hard to influence the price stability or the availability of raw materials. However, what we can influence is the labor side, which I think if we need to summarize it, would be creating safe and raw environment to build workers' confidence to return to work. So how do you do this? I think Mr. Sharma has again very well explained how a company can successfully do this. Yeah, from our point of view, just for the simplicity of explaining it, there are essentially two factors. Yeah, the first is on the strategic level, where you need to reinforce and revisit your COVID response policy within the business. I think after 2 years, it is we see a lot of people starting to maybe dilute the policy or rather not following it. So this is something which can be quite dangerous and have the potential to create challenges in the recovery of the textile businesses. We also need to reiterate good hygiene practices among workers and employees, including putting reminders, maybe campaigns, etc., to encourage good hygiene practices. Evaluate lease policy for all workers, which I think is important in the textile industry, where if you have your worker infected or show symptoms of COVID-19, you need to be able to put him or her in paid sick leave to ensure that the rest of the workers are not infected as well. Greater emphasis of the needs of more vulnerable groups. I'll get into that in the next slide as I explain it a little bit further. We also would recommend to have an on-site medical team with full-time capacity in cases where if you don't have the resources or unable to provide medical team on site, you can also then create linkages with the local healthcare, hospital, clinics, etc., so that you have medical supports readily available to you 24/7. And of course, frequent review of your intervention to ensure that there is no complacency creeping in, as well as to ensure that the efficiency of your responses are taken care of and up to date. On the operational level, I think it's quite important to frequently engage workers on this issue. Keep in mind that there are still myths and information and disinformation out there among the public, including the textile workers, and to ensure that the right information, data, and healthcare informations are being floated in the workers, it is important to address these false information so that workers are safe as well. It is also recommended to have identification of high touch points so that you can ensure frequent sanitation of those areas. For example, high touch point would be the production areas, the canteen, even the washing area needs to be put on focus to ensure that it is sanitized frequently. On operational level also, we find that companies find it easier to have a checklist on areas to sanitize and perhaps implement staggered start and end of shift in terms of timing, and marking of areas of high infections as well. So, why do we need this training? Well, because there is still a need for it. In the previous training, we saw that we conducted six training, and we trained approximately 92 companies with over 200,000 workforce, and they themselves come back to us and say we need greater technical training to ensure that our workers are safe. And because of this, we would like to launch our training on safety and healthcare. And to do that, I would then invite Dr. Vasudevan to introduce to you, ladies and gentlemen, our training on healthcare and safety. Thank you. Dr. Vasudevan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. Mr. Philip Glazer, Dr. J.V. Rao, Mr. Gaurav Sharma, Mr. Indrash Ghosh, captains from the industry. A very good afternoon to all of you. First of all, let me thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to talk to all of you in this webinar. I've been requested by the organizers to talk about the need for a hygiene training to ensure safe and continuous operations. I'm sure that most of us have been touched by COVID by now, in some way or the other, either in our families or in the friend circles or in the places where we work. In fact, Citra had a scare a couple of weeks ago when over 25% of the staff tested positive. Unfortunately, only a few of them developed symptoms, and the operations were disrupted for about a week or so, and now we are back to working normally. Of course, Citra was working without any disruption, even during the first lockdown period, where Citra's laboratories were testing the medical PPE. We were the only laboratory at the time to test medical PPE in India. So our labs were working 24/7, in spite of all the difficulties to come and work in Citra at the time because of the lockdowns and other difficulties of commuting. So I guess I can talk as someone who has had a first-hand experience of running an institution amid this pandemic and taking key decisions to keep the organization as well as individual safety in my organization. So why do we need a training program like this? Most of us know what to do. Some of the things we are already aware. We see on the television, we hear everywhere. The counseling is coming, but still there is no organized program which is happening to train people from the industry. The COVID pandemic, the level of dramatic, I would say, loss of human life worldwide, and the amount of challenges to public health, food security, and the places of work, this is highly unprecedented. The economic and the social disruption caused by the pandemic is devastating. Tens of millions of people have already been pushed to extreme poverty, I would say. And millions of enterprises have faced or continue to face an existential threat. As they say, nearly half of the world's 3.3 billion workforce have been at the edge with regard to their livelihoods, basically because of the lack of social security, access to quality healthcare, and also many have lost access to their productive assets which they owned earlier before the pandemic. And also worryingly, data from the COVID-19 World Symptom Survey shows there is a decline in preventive behaviors such as physical distancing, mask wearing, hand washing, and also we see overcrowding in public places. There seems to be some kind of fatigue which is setting, COVID fatigue, I would say. So these are factors we have to consider because these are needed. Because the training is required because of this. And basically adhering to the workplace safety and health practices, ensuring access to decent work and the protection, will be crucial in addressing at least the human dimension of this crisis. We may not be able to address the other economic and other social issues, but at least the human dimensions of this crisis, we will be able to tackle at least at our own level. Immediate and purposeful action to save lives and livelihoods should be carried out. It's very important. And particular attention, must be paid to the situation of women. They are actually overrepresented, especially in low-paid jobs and especially in the care roles. So we need to look at them, their well-being as well during this pandemic. Despite an increased focus on global health security, COVID-19 has revealed a critical need for a well-coordinated, multi-sectoral health emergency capacity and preparedness at all levels and within all countries. There needs to be a continuing efforts to create early warning systems to mitigate and manage public health risks within the national context as well as the worldwide context, and to improve our operational preparedness as well as planning. So in short, the pandemic has underscored the need for an efficient multilateral cooperation that's responsive to the needs of each industry and reflects its unique priorities. Each industry is very different from one another, so the priorities could be different, but the approach, I believe, should be the same. So we need to spend a lot of time considering the industry's requirements, each and every industry's requirements, and take necessary steps. And the best way to prevent or slow down the transmission is to be well informed about the disease and how the virus spreads. Initiative like this training is needed to maximize the expertise, resources, and reach of each organization to rapidly scale solutions and deliver measurable impact. So as organizations, we are responsible for the overall health and safety of the employees, the workers we employ, whether it's warehouse or at the level of executives. They must feel confident, they must feel safe during the pandemic to come and work. And it's, I think, to make that happen is no easy task. As Mr. Gaurav Sharma spoke, so many steps are required to encourage them to stay back or feel safe in their work here. And as my other panelists spoke, organizations have suffered large-scale disruptions during the first phase as well as in the second phase of pandemic. Basically because one of the reasons is the lack of awareness among the employees on how to protect themselves and others in this scenario. Keeping the employees safe and healthy requires knowledge of hygiene, which is basically a science dedicated to anticipation, evaluation, communication, and control of the environment in the workplace, which affects the well-being of the employees. So this is actually a science. So we need to be aware about each and every finer aspects of the hygiene practices. So practice of even certain basic aspects, hygiene practices, and safety measures would help make the workplaces relatively safer. I'm using the word relatively because there is no way we can ensure 100% safety. You cannot create bubbles, the bio bubbles, as they say, in a workplace. And we know that what has happened even in bio bubbles, people have got still infected. So it's not a foolproof arrangement, but at least we can prevent large-scale outbreaks within the industry, and we can perhaps reduce the disruptions to small, local or manageable at lower manageable levels. That's what we can expect. So to conclude, the understanding the principles of hygiene will help us prevent spread of this virus within the organizations, and we can perhaps build a more healthier and more productive workplace. It's all about maintaining a minimum necessary workplace precautions that are needed for managing the work environment to prevent the spread of the virus from an infected person to others. And among many precautions, some of the precautions may be very simple, as teaching them about the right procedures to be followed. For example, when somebody has a sneeze or a cough, it could be, it may look very silly, but these are very important. They may not be using the sanitizers properly. They may not be doing the hand washing properly. These are things which may have to be taught. Some of these aspects, will be discussed during the seminar. So about the occupational health and safety in the textile units, based on the various guidelines by regulatory authorities and the preventive measures which we must take to prevent COVID-19 at the workplace. So I would like to take this opportunity to compliment Indo-German Chamber of Commerce and Textile Sector Skill Council for thinking of organizing such a training program, and which is actually being conducted by CITRA on 22nd, 23rd, and 24th of this month. It's mainly meant for personnel working in the textile industry, right, from the level of operatives to managers. So I'm sure that this training will go a long way in educating the employees on the dangers posed and the safety measures they must take to overcome this malaise. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vasudevan, for your thoughts on the training. With that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, participants this afternoon, I would like to be the first to invite you to be a part of our healthcare and safety training for business and human, rather for the textile industry. Yeah, and this training we will be opening sometime this week, but for the participants today, we will be sending you the first invites after the webinar. Yeah, so don't worry, you'll get the forms as well as the details as the first people in the world to be having this, and from IGCC as well as the Business Scouts for Development, along with TSC and Citra, we would like to welcome you as the first participants to our training, which will happen on the 22nd, 23rd, and as well as 24th, and the details will be sent to you on email. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I would also then like to thank you all our panelists today, Dr. Rao, Dr. Vasudevan, Mr. Philip Glazer. I would also like to thank you, my colleague, Ms. Nikita Ajane, also our esteemed guest, Mr. Gaurav Sharma, Mr. Thomas Michels, who support us in organizing this event, also Ms. Alina Moser. And with that, wish all of you a very good afternoon and good evening ahead. Take care, stay safe, and we will see you in the training. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.